Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Recurrent Forum. We start our operation today. My name is Olga Tomanova. It's year 9 in the war and day 293 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And now we will be talking about the operations of our state emergency service. We will be talking about their operation both in Kyiv and in Ukraine in general. Let me introduce our speakers. It's Yuriy Kupriyenko, Chief Inspector at the Department of Handling Extra Hazardous Object of the Main Directorate of the State Emergency Service, Mr. Yuriy. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. We understand that lately the realities are such that we're living under the threat of massive missile strikes. Such missile strikes are happening on a regular basis, and unfortunately the aftermath of such strikes is the damage of our critical infrastructure. It's cold outside now, it's winter, and people are looking for alternative ways to heat themselves, alternative ways for cooking, how to ensure their safety and security in such situations. Thank you for your question. And yes, with the advent of the winter temperatures and the shutdowns related to the massive missile strikes, we see the increase of fires in Kyiv, which are resulting from use of the gas bottles. For example, 8 cases are documented in Kyiv in relation with the devices I managed. 6 did not result in fire, and 2 of them resulted in explosions of fires. There were 3 more documented cases of fire related to the use of generators. The generators caught fire and the equipment was damaged. We're now investigating the causes of such cases, and now we see the increase in the number of fires related to the use or improper handling of electric networks. There is a certain list of recommendations to be adhered to avoid fires. So let us talk about such recommendations. What is the list of such recommendations? For example, in case of generators, people find their alternative to get their electric power from generators, but there is a number of issues to talk about. Yes, currently there is a list of recommendations of advice how to use that type of equipment. Among such recommendations are to use them only in the open space, outside. Do not use it inside, not in the balconies, not in the underground passageways, because it's prohibited by all applicable standards. There should be used at certain distance from windows, from the residential spaces, because such spaces can be filled with the products of burning. Pay attention to the power straps, to extension cords. Make sure they are in good order. Make sure it does not impede the evacuation, the movement of people. Make sure to avoid the electric shock, and pay attention to the manuals provided by every manufacturer of the generator equipment. For example, the protection of generators against any precipitations. Those who use the generators should equip certain type of cover for them, which would ensure the proper ventilation, and to avoid the precipitations falling over the generators or some minor flooding, which would result in a short circuit or other causes which may result in electric shock. Also pay attention to the flammable material storage. They should only be stored outside. The generators should only be fueled when they cool down, and never leave that type of equipment unattended. As to the types of equipment used for cooking, You were talking about the gas bottles, touristic burners, touristic stoves. There are also cases which result in some tragedies and casualties. Well, first of all, we cannot categorically, absolutely restrict the application of such touristic stoves, but still people should pay attention to the location of such gas bottles of these touristic stoves. The use of gas bottles in apartments is prohibited generally, but if people use some touristic equipment, we know that the explosions or the fires were erupting because the people were using those gas burners on top of their home stoves, either electric or gas stoves, and when the power went back on, the domestic stove was heating and the burner exploded due to the heating. So make sure you have proper ventilation. You should always make sure the proper connection to the gas pipe, and put it aside from any flammable materials. And after the end of operation, my advice is to disconnect this device or the so-called or the gas bottle from any type of equipment, and keep away from warm areas, from open fire and direct sunlight. Also, one of the advice is not to dispose of the gas bottles into the regular garbage bins. There are special means of disposal for this type of garbage, and there is a specialized center in Kyiv where people should resort, well, maybe not to come there with one single gas bottle, but our government is currently considering the issue of the centralized collection of such used gas bottles for further utilization. Thank you, sir. Thank you for this information. What about the dynamics? If we compare November and December, it's been almost half of December. What do you observe in terms of fires? What is the dynamics? Is there increase in the number of such cases? Well, the cases, the fires which result from gas bottles, they are unique. So with advent of the realities we find ourselves in, this statistics is being documented like for the first time, because previously there were cases of use of the gas bottles in Lviv, we remember. There were some cases of that kind, but now those touristic bottles, the gas bottles, this is the first ring, so to say, that makes us vigilant. So for the people to make their lives safer, please pay more attention to our advice. Our next speaker is the press officer of the State Emergency Service, Mr. Oleksandr Khorunzhyy. So, Mr. Oleksandr, let's start with the pyrotechnic work of your unit. Maybe the most actual subject for maybe the occupied areas. We see the cases when unfortunately the servicemen of the State Emergency Service get injured or step on a mine, and there were cases with 4 policemen recently. Can you tell us more about these tragic cases? Good afternoon, everybody. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Yeah, so in response to your question, first of all, as to the operation of the pyrotechnic units, I want to say that our pyrotechnics fulfilled more than 38,000 missions upon reports of the civilians, and within that period, more than 300,000 IEDs were diffused, including 2,155 aviation bombs. More than 6,000 hectares of area were already swept, and the main regions are Kyiv, Donetsk, Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipro, and Zaporizhia and Kherson regions are the regions where the most of the pyrotechnic units are concentrated for the demining operations. The works are still in progress. The weather conditions somewhat slow down the operation of the pyrotechnic units, because if there is a little snow, the pyrotechnics, they just cannot visually identify the explosive device, which slows down the pace of operation, because visualization is very important. Not all the metal detectors can detect the mines, because some of them are made of plastic. However, the work is still in progress, and we maintain some steady pace, and we get results in demining operations. We work currently in the occupied regions, I mean Kharkiv and Kherson regions. What about the operation situation? What can you tell us what happened within the last week? Well, we have to look at it at the context. For example, talking about Kherson region, within one day we searched more than 9 hectares of the territory and identified more than 200 explosive devices, which were diffused. In Kharkiv region, we searched more than 2 hectares and diffused 193 explosive devices. Every region has its own statistics. Talking about Kherson region, from the beginning of the war, we searched 841 hectares and diffused almost around 10,000 explosive devices. Talking about Kherson region, we understand that in percentage how much is left. Is at least half of work already completed? No, it's not even close to a half. There's still a lot of work to do. The area is very contaminated, is very densely contaminated with explosive devices. And just the day before yesterday, I arrived from Kherson region. I was working together with the pyrotechnic units. I was watching them work. We were shooting some footage, and there's a lot of work to do. I would say those are waterways, the gasways, the gas pipes, the aerial electric lines to provide people with power supply and water supply to make their lives more comfortable, and obviously reacting to the civilians reports. We were going on a mission to Posad Pokrovsky. The village was almost completely destroyed by the Russians, and there's a lot of cluster explosive devices scattered around the area. Like, you walk along the road and you can see them by the size of the road, but they're small and they're very hazardous because they can explode at any second. So I want to deliver my message to the residents of the occupied territories. When you decide to come back to your home, call the local authorities to double check if you may come back, if it's safe to come back, because Kherson is being shelled on a daily basis. Is the area already demined? If you do come back, only move along the paved road, because the ground roads are still mined. Don't visit any water reservoirs, don't go to the forest, don't go in the field, because there's still a lot of explosive devices, a lot of unexploded ammunition found by our pyrotechnics. We would obviously use some international help. The Deputy Minister of Interior Mary Akapan mentioned it. We now require the vehicles of automatic demining. We United 24 Fund helped us with procuring one of such vehicles for Kharkiv region, but the more we have them, the better. We could use them in all the hazardous areas. It would expedite our work, and it would also, so to say, free some personnel which works on some hazardous areas. As to the tragic cases which happened recently, can you give us a few comments on those? Well, generally, from the beginning of the war, we have 54 rescuers who died, and 176 are currently injured. Some of them are prisoners by the Russian Federation. And there are cases when even the professionals, the best ones, perished because the enemy uses very diverse types of ammunition and mines and so-called mine traps. And it's quite difficult to operate there because even the professionals have to open or discover some new types of vile traps left by the occupiers. And 3 of our servicemen died yesterday in Donetsk region in the district of Konstantinovka during the mining operation. And I want to express my compassion to all the relatives, to all the close ones. And 2 more are in the hospital, and the doctors are fighting for their lives. Thank you, sir. I would like to continue with the subject, our general subject, our general topic, the fire safety, or we can say home safety, domestic safety. The total statistic is that within the 11 months of 2022, we had more than 75,000 fires all across Ukraine. It's 0.3% more than last year, and the fires resulted in death of 1,327 people. The main reasons is the improper handling of fire, but we document increase in the number of fires which result from violation of safety rules while using electric equipment, including short circuit resulting from overload of the electric networks of the power grid. It's 10% more than in October now. And the violation of safety rules while using the heat generating equipment. I mean heaters, stoves, and obviously the gas burners. The increase is due the increase is 83%. I mean November comparing to October. But for the last 11 days of December, it's 100% comparing to November. Well, it's a seasonal hazard, but we observe the growing dynamic of constant growing of fires due to those specific reasons. And if you're seeing these pictures now, the increase in the number of fires and cases of explosions which result from gas burners. Yesterday we documented an explosion in Odessa. The explosion happened on the 19th floor of a 25-story building. The facade was damaged without further burning, but you see the scale of destruction. So even 40-millimeter gas bottle may result in very severe damage. 11th of December, there was an explosion of a gas bottle in Berzhanska Street in Obolon district in Kyiv. In the 9th floor of a 16-story building, the rescuers went out on a mission. There were no injured. The windows were damaged, and the property inside the apartment was damaged too. In Volyn, there was an explosion of 2 touristic gas bottles, which resulted in injury of people. Well, according to approximate preliminary evaluation, there was an first explosion of first bottle, which resulted in explosion of another bottle. There was a mother with 2 kids in an apartment. Mother was burnt, and the father was brought to the staircase by the explosion wave. So we document a large number of such cases, and I want to advise in this regard. I want to advise the people to buy the equipment. Like our colleagues, they gave me this specimen of a gas burner. I want to draw people's attention to this. This is a touristic gas burner. Why is it called so? Because we use it in the open space outside. State Emergency Service does not recommend using this type of equipment at home, but we know that people do use them at home, so there are certain recommendations. First of all, people have to buy this type of equipment, the certified types of equipment, from a certified seller, and in case of explosion, you can submit your claims to those who sold you the equipment of improper quality. When you buy a gas bottle, just check it with the help of a soap solution to make sure there is no feeding of gas. And if you know that children may use it, you have to brief them properly that they should not use any type of this equipment, and don't store the gas bottles in cold areas, because when you bring it into some warm area, the gas expands and the bottle may explode. In the rooms where you use any such type of equipment, it should be properly ventilated. So if you buy any type of this equipment, please buy a fire extinguisher. It will allow you to suppress the fire at its initial stage, and there will be no spread of fire. So those are the short advice, but please adhere to them. If you have any opportunity not to use this type of gas burner, please wait a little bit when the power goes back on and cook your meals on the electric stove, because we document more cases of such explosions, specifically in the apartment buildings where mostly electric stoves are used. When the power is shut down, people switch to these type of gas burners. So please refer to the manufacturer's manual for this type of gas burner. And look, I will show you how it may explode, for example. This is the gas burner. This is where you connect the gas bottle. We documented a number of cases when a big bowl or pan is being put on top of the gas burner. So what happens to them? They're being heated. The warmth from the pan is being transferred to the gas bottle. And what happens to the gas bottles under high temperatures? The gas is expanding, and it results in an explosion. So this is one of the reasons why it happens so. Because it's a very hazardous, very dangerous thing. So think twice whether you need to use it right now, or you can wait until the power goes back on. Well, yeah, there are cases when you need it right here and right now. So in those cases, please comply with all the safety measures. Just use it for a short time, but don't cook for the whole family on gas burners like this. This is in brief for the gas bottles, but it's not only gas bottles which pose hazard for the people, but the generators as well. It's one of the new hazards that Ukrainian state's emergency service is facing now. I'll give you a short statistics as to the poisoning of the people. The statistics is being provided by the Ministry of Health. So the number of patients with the gas poisoning in November was 368 persons, including 92 children. 20 of them died. So we even have breakdown by days until the 7th of December, so we could see some dynamics. 97 people were poisoned within the 7 days of December, including 25 kids. It all resulted in 14 deaths. So we see that every month the number of such cases grows. We document the most number of such cases in Lviv, Kyiv, Dnipro, and Kharkiv regions. That's why my colleague already mentioned some minimal requirements to generators, but I have one rule and I have one request that you should remember. The generators should be only used in open air, only in open air. And the further possible from windows and doors. If there is a wall, so the distance may be 1 meter. If there is no wall, the distance should be 6 meters. And again, only certified products from licensed sellers. We ask for a certificate and don't connect it by ourselves, but all the generators should be connected by the specialists, so you can avoid any short circuits, fires, or whatsoever. So the generator should be only fueled when it's off, and when it's cooled down, in no case it should be working during fueling. And another rule, always have a fire extinguisher at hand. If generator catches fire, immediately put out the fire at initial stage with the fire extinguisher. And as to the gas poisoning, I don't only mean the cases resulting from operation of generators, but there are also cases of gas poisoning from domestic stoves. So before the heating season, make sure your stove doesn't have cracks or flaws. You have to clean your chimney, so the products of burning and the fire freely goes through the chimney. Put a metal sheet on the bottom so the cinder doesn't fall on the floor, and don't leave the ovens unattended. And the same applies to the boilers. If they're not properly prepared, they may produce some gas. And another short advice: now there are detectors of gas in the market. So if you use an oven or a stove or a generator or another heat generating device at home which produce some burning, just install that sensor, and in case of CO2, it will give you a signal, just like an alarm clock, and the people may, if they may be sleeping, they wake up and understand that they should open the doors, the windows, and evacuate their families. And again, as for generators, never install them inside your apartments, not in the balconies, not in the rooms. Think about those around you, your neighbors. Don't put them in the cellars or in any covered areas. So that's it with the safety rules. Thank you, sir, for this useful information. Dear colleagues, I'm sure you may have some questions. Let's proceed to Q&A session. Please introduce yourself. Irina Kožuhar, Ukrinform, could you please tell us how many resilience stations are deployed by State Emergency Service? With, for example, during the last day, there were a lot of fake news in this regard. Maybe you want to give us some comments, some details about that. Yes. Today, well, it started yesterday, actually. There were news in some regional editorials, maybe in Telegram, that in Pechersk district of Kyiv, the resilience station was burning. I don't know where this information came from. I don't know what kind of video and pictures are those, because we verified the information and we were not able to confirm it. That was not true. I don't know why, but the local media started translating that information. I want to tell you that from the very beginning we deployed 1,070 resilience stations across Ukraine. I mean, specifically by State Emergency Service, and we had no single fire. I'm talking about the resilience stations deployed by State Emergency Service. I mean the tents and the fire units, firefighting units. There were no single fire there. There are always servicemen on duty, along with the representatives of national police, and they are real professionals, so you can be sure about that. As to the provided aid, from the beginning of the operation of the resilience points, more than 246,000 people received some help at those resilience stations, and our people really try to satisfy the people's needs to maximum extent. I mean, the charging of telephones, power banks, drinking coffee, tea, have some snack, cookies. Some of the resilience stations are equipped with internet, so we keep working on that. And I want to tell the mass media, please verify the information and don't spread the fakes. Dear friends, any more questions? Natalia Movchanova, Ukrinform. I have two questions, and one is about generators and resilience stations. So because they're not only located at resilience stations, but also in the schools and other premises, the generators are installed there as well. And that there is a question: who should do the maintenance of them? Who should provide fuel? Any rules of safety? Who should appoint the responsible persons who maintain the generators? And another question is to the touristic gas bottles and gas burners. They're being sold widely everywhere, and people, to save more, they buy the recharged gas bottles. Can you please tell how hazardous it is, or is it safer than the single-use gas bottles? How should people act if they want to use that type of equipment? Well, as to the question number one regarding schools and local governments premises, so it's more questions to the local governments rather than to State Emergency Service, or to those who should appoint the people who would be responsible for fuel and for fueling the generators and to develop the schedules of their operation. I cannot give you any detail about that, because the State Emergency Service, I'm talking about resilience stations, they're organized in a very straight way. And we have operations team who drive around and they inspect the operation of State Emergency Service personnel. So you should, this question should be addressed rather with the local governments or those who are responsible for the premises where the generators are located. And as to the as to the gas bottles, in no case I know that there are people, for example, that you can find on the internet, who recharge the single-use gas bottles, who want to fuel it and to use it twice. So it should in no case be done, because it has thin walls. It only can be used one single time. This is how it's contemplated by the manufacturer. As to the big gas bottles, their use in apartment blocks is prohibited. It's prohibited because they can only be used in private residential buildings, in the buildings up to 2 floors, and in no case they can be used in apartment blocks with many stories, many apartments. Well, you've seen the consequences of explosion of small touristic bottles. But so imagine what can an explosion of a big gas bottle result in. That may have very serious consequences. It may result in the very serious damage. Thank you, dear friends. Do you have any more questions? No more questions. I really appreciate our profound conversation. I hope, dear friends, you noted all this advice. Let's adhere to them. Let's keep ourselves safe and those around us. And dear friends, I will remind you, our next briefing is at 1400. We will have Andriy Demchenko visit us, the spokesperson of the State Border Guard of the service, and we will talk about the situation in our borders. So bear with us, and glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes.